The blast tore through the quiet night, turning my Chevy into a roaring inferno that lit up the empty road like a 4th of July show. Shards of metal scattered across the pavement. The stench of burning tires filled the air with thick, choking smoke. The dashboard clock had flashed 8:15 p.m. when the explosion ripped through the car's underbelly. Just 6 seconds earlier, I'd felt a faint click under my seat, barely noticeable, but my ears defusing bombs in the military screamed a trap. Instinct took over. I shoved the door open, threw myself out of the moving car, and tumbled into a roadside gully. The Chevy rolled another 20 feet before it blew. Now, my ears buzzing and my arms scraped bloody, I lay still in the muddy water. The heat from the flames warmed my face, even from 40 feet away. This wasn't some freak accident. Someone had rigged my car to explode. Someone who knew my routine. Someone who knew I'd be alone on this stretch outside Greensboro. 3 weeks back, I'd stumbled across the messages on my wife's phone, encrypted, but not enough to stump a guy who cracked codes for a living. I didn't call her out. Instead, I played it cool, watching her every move. I set up tiny cameras in our Midtown Memphis house, mirrored her cloud data, and tracked her calls. Now, someone, probably her, had tried to wipe me out. I sank lower into the gully as headlights cut through the dark. A sleek gray SUV pulled up near the blazing wreck. My wife, now going by Meredith, stepped out, her stilettos tapping on the asphalt. She didn't scream or dial 911. She just stood there, arms folded, staring at the fire like it was a campfire. A lanky guy climbed out of the passenger side. I recognized him from the footage I'd pulled, Dr. Garrett Hensley, a hotshot cosmetic surgeon from Memphis's Rich and Famous, and the guy Meredith had been sneaking around with for the last 8 months. Garrett edged toward the burning car, shielding his face from the heat. "I don't see him in there," he said, voice shaking. "He couldn't have made it out of that." Meredith's tone was cold as ice. "Look at that fire. He's gone." Garrett sounded jittery. "What if they need a body for the insurance payout?" She laughed, sharp and hollow. "They won't. They'll assume he's ash. Maybe we just need a few teeth or something." I gripped the old dog tags around my neck, the ones I'd kept since my days in Iraq. With a quick yank, I tore them off and clutched them in my muddy fist. Meredith spoke again, her voice clipped. "Let's get out of here. Someone might drive by. We're pushing our luck." Garrett hesitated. "If they dig into this, they'll find the tampered fuel line. That's all they'll see." I watched them slide back into the SUV and peel out. Dragging myself from the gully, I chucked my dog tags through the shattered back window of the burning Chevy. It was time to vanish. But I'd be back when they least expected it. 2 days later, Meredith stood in the glossy office of a Nashville insurance firm, dressed in black like she was auditioning for a funeral scene. She clutched a tissue she hadn't touched to her face. The adjuster pushed papers across his desk. "The remains were identified as your husband's," he said. Dental records and dog tags confirmed it. Meredith dabbed at her dry eyes like a pro. "It's still so hard to believe." "I understand, Mrs. Carver," the adjuster said. "The policy will pay out $3 million. We've fast-tracked it given the situation." Her pen moved across the forms with a practiced flourish. Outside, Garrett waited in his BMW, sunglasses hiding the smug look I knew he had. She slid into the passenger seat, a real grin breaking through for the first time since the explosion. "It's over," she said, grabbing his hand. "We're in the clear." Garrett leaned in for a kiss, all confidence and expensive cologne. "How long until the money hits?" 5 business days, she said, running her fingers through his graying hair. "Then we clear my debts, sell the house, and head to Bermuda." "What about the cabin?" he asked. "You put it on the market yet?" Her smile turned sharp. "I was thinking we keep it. It's our little hideout when we swing back to the States. Completely off the radar." Garrett frowned. "Is that smart?" "It's perfect," she said. "We'll head there tonight to celebrate." What they didn't see was the tiny drone, no bigger than a sparrow, hovering near the BMW. Its mic picked up every word. Across town, in a bare-bones apartment I'd rented with cash, I watched the drone's feed on my laptop. 2 days since I died, and I was already a ghost, using a fake ID I'd made years ago after coming back from deployment, paranoid as hell. The burns on my arm stung under the bandages, and my twisted ankle throbbed from the dive into the gully, but that pain was nothing compared to the ice-cold anger burning in my chest. I'd loved Meredith for nearly a decade, given her everything, and she'd tried to cash in on my life insurance with a bomb. I pulled up another window on my laptop, tapping into the cameras I'd hidden in our house before the accident. The place was empty. They were headed to the cabin, a property Meredith had bought through some shady shell company with money I couldn't trace until now. My fingers flew across the keyboard, cracking into her cloud storage. Locked folders spilled open under my touch, revealing files, photos, and recordings. I clicked one, a conversation from a month ago. Meredith's voice filled the room. Just make sure the blast leaves nothing behind. I don't want to deal with identifying scraps. Garrett's laugh came through, smug as ever. With that much explosive under the seat, there won't be anything left. You'll be a rich widow by next week. I'd suspected it, but hearing her talk about my death like it was a business deal hardened something inside me. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to dismantle their lives, piece by piece, until they had nothing left. I opened my old military photo, the one from my service file. With a few quick edits, I added a beard, changed my hair color, and tweaked my features. This was my new face, Ethan Caldwell, former client of attorney Nora Hensley. She was the woman I'd loved before Meredith, the one who had no idea I was still breathing. But she'd find out soon enough, and she'd help me tear Meredith's world to shreds. I sat in Nora Hensley's law office, high above Main Street in the bustling core of Nashville's downtown. Nora, at 35, had made a name for herself as a fierce divorce lawyer, the kind who tore through cases of cheating spouses and shady finances like a hot knife through butter. Her auburn hair was tied back in a tight knot, and her navy suit fit like it was custom-made as she flipped through a stack of files. Her assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Miss Hensley, your 230 is here. Ethan Caldwell." Nora tidied her desk and said, "Let him in." When I walked through the door, I could tell I wasn't what she expected. The beard I'd grown at half my face, and the thick-rimmed glasses perched on my nose, slightly crooked, like it had taken a punch, threw her off. Something in the way I carried myself sparked a flicker in her eyes, like she was trying to place me but couldn't. "Miss Hensley," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Thanks for meeting me." "Take a seat," she said, pointing to the chair across from her desk. "What can I do for you, Mr. Caldwell?" I eased into the chair, my movements sharp from years in the military. "I need a lawyer who knows how to track down hidden assets and deal with identity theft. Word is, you're the best." Her smile was all business. "Who sent you my way, if you don't mind me asking?" "Wade Carver," I said. The name hit her like a gut punch. Her shoulders tensed, and her grip on her pen tightened until her knuckles whitened. "Wade Carver's dead," she said. "Car explosion a couple days ago." I leaned in, slipping off my glasses. My blue eyes met hers, eyes she'd know anywhere, eyes she used to see every morning when we were together. "Not quite," I said softly. "I'm still here." Her pen hit the desk with a clatter. "My God," she whispered. "Wade." I raised a finger to my lips. "I need your help, Nora. And nobody can know I'm alive." "What happened to you?" she asked, her eyes scanning the bruises peeking out from my shirt collar, the scabbed cuts on my knuckles. "My wife tried to kill me," I said, my voice calm but hard. "And now I'm gonna take everything she's got, her money, her lies, her whole damn life. I need a lawyer I can trust." Nora stared at me for a long moment. We'd called it quits years ago when I shipped out overseas, but it wasn't messy, just bad timing, lives pulling us apart. She'd heard about my marriage through old friends. "Lay it all out," she said finally, grabbing a notepad. "Every detail." For the next hour, I spilled everything. The bomb wired to my car, the $3 million insurance payout, Meredith's affair with Garrett Hensley, the secret cabin she'd bought, the $250,000 in debt she's racked up behind my back. Nora's face darkened as she listened. "This isn't just divorce stuff, Wade," she said. "This is attempted murder. We need to call the cops." I shook my head. "If I show my face now, they'll cover their tracks. The insurance money will vanish to some offshore account. I need ironclad proof they can't wiggle out of." Nora tapped her pen on the notepad. "So what's your plan?" I set a small gadget on her desk. "I've already got eyes on them. They're at the cabin right now, toasting to my death. But there's something else." I paused, and for a second, the hurt I'd been burying slipped through. "Meredith's pregnant." Nora's breath hitched. "And you think?" I don't know if it's mine, I said, my voice flat. But I'm gonna find out. And if it is, that changes the game. Nora reached across the desk and grabbed my hand, her touch soft but firm. What do you need me to do? File papers to seize control of my estate, I said. Challenge Meredith's claim to the insurance money. Say you're doing it for my folks. Your parents passed away, she said, raising an eyebrow. A grim smile tugged at my lips. Meredith doesn't know that. Never told her about my past. She thinks they're off living in Montana, cut off from me. Nora pulled her hand back, studying me. I wasn't the same guy she'd known, the quiet, straight-arrow soldier who'd left for war. This version of me was sharper, colder. I'll help you get justice, she said carefully, but I'm not crossing any legal lines. I don't need you to break the law, I said with a nod. As Nora started jotting notes, I glanced at my phone. The drone I'd sent to the cabin was streaming thermal footage, 2 figures moving around in the main bedroom. One more thing, I said, sliding an envelope across her desk. I need you to get me into Garrett Hensley's medical practice records. Legally. Nora opened the envelope and skimmed the pages inside, screenshots of texts between Garrett and a drug rep, talking about payouts for pushing certain painkillers. Where'd you get this? She asked, her tone sharp. Found them in Meredith's cloud storage, I said. She's been helping him funnel the cash. Nora exhaled slowly. This is heavy, Wade. Drug trafficking, insurance scams, this is big. Now you see why I can't just let this go, I said, standing and adjusting my fake glasses. They're not just crooks. They're dangerous. As I headed for the door, Nora called out, if that baby's yours, what's your move? I froze, hand on the doorknob. For a split second, the hard shell I'd built cracked, and she saw the guy she used to know. Then my voice turned to steel. If it's mine, I'll make damn sure my kid never knows the kind of snakes their mom and her boyfriend really are. The cabin sat tucked against the edge of Lake Hartwell, its sleek glass and steel design shimmering in the water's reflection. A thick wall of cedar trees shielded it from prying eyes, giving Meredith and Garrett the seclusion they wanted. They had no clue I was watching. I'd set up a surveillance post in a rundown boathouse half a mile down the shore. 3 thermal drones took turns keeping tabs, each running for 10 hours before I swapped their batteries. Inside the damp, moldy shack, I'd rigged my gear, laptops, signal amplifiers, and a high-powered mic. For 6 days, I barely slept, tracking their every step, every word. My old military training came in handy, waiting like a hunter, logging details like a spook. On day 7, I hit pay dirt. Meredith stood on the deck, staring out at the lake, phone pressed to her ear. She didn't know my mic was picking up every syllable. No, you listen, she snapped. I need those debts wiped before the insurance money hits. If my credit gets flagged, they'll start digging. She paced barefoot, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. I don't care how you do it, Victor. That's why I pay you. Get that $250,000 off my record by Thursday. I zoomed in with my camera, catching the worry etched on her face as she hung up. Garrett stepped out, holding 2 glasses of bourbon. He offered her one. You sure you should be drinking that? I muttered to myself, adjusting the mic. Meredith took the glass but didn't sip. Victor's struggling to bury the debt, she said. The insurance company might hold up the transfer. Garrett's cool guy act cracked. What? You said this was foolproof. It will be, she said. Victor just needs a few more days. We don't have days, Garrett shot back, his voice sharp. My partners at the clinic are sniffing around the books. I've been dipping into my cut to cover your shopping binges for months. Meredith's eyes narrowed. My shopping? Who got the new Jag last month? Who had to have that speedboat? That's not the same, Garrett growled, grabbing her arm. Bourbon splashed over his glass. I wasn't the one cozying up to someone else for their bank account. My finger froze on the camera. That was new. Meredith jerked her arm free. Don't you dare pin that on me. You knew what I was doing with Simon. You pushed me to dig into his investment accounts, not to mess around. It worked, didn't it? Garrett said. We've got his offshore account codes. I jotted a quick note, Simon Whitaker, Meredith's real estate client. Another mark in their scam. I'd need to dig deeper. Garrett downed his bourbon in one gulp. Just make sure you clean up the mess. We're too close to blow this. I've got it under control, Meredith said, her tone softening as Garrett pulled her close. He kissed her neck. You booked the appointment? Next Tuesday, she said. They'll run the paternity test then. My heart kicked up a notch. Garrett frowned. Do we really need it? Does it matter whose kid it is? Meredith stepped back. Of course it matters. If it's Wade's, we can milk child support on top of the payout. If it's yours, she shrugged. We'll figure it out. Garrett's face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not raising a kid while we're dodging the law, she said. That wasn't the deal. I recorded every second, their fight, their makeup, the icy calculation in their voices. That night, when they finally crashed, I slipped into Garrett's Lexus and cloned the security system, planting a tracker under the dash. By dawn, I'd hacked into his smart home setup, tapping into the cameras, locks, and even the thermostat at his Midtown Memphis mansion. The next step was coming fast. Nora Hensley stood in front of Judge Evelyn Caldwell in a Davidson County courtroom, her navy suit swapped for a softer gray one, less cutthroat, more approachable. Your Honor, she said, I'm filing this motion on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Leonard Carver, parents of the late Wade Carver. They're challenging the insurance payout to Meredith Carver, suspecting fraud. The judge looked over her glasses. What's your basis, Ms. Hensley? Wade voiced concerns about his safety to his parents before he died, Nora said. We also have reason to believe Mrs. Carver was involved in an affair and had financial reasons to want her husband gone. Meredith's lawyer, a slick guy in a tailored suit, jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. These are baseless claims against my client, who's grieving the tragic loss of her husband. Judge Caldwell raised a hand. Save it for the hearing, Mr. Thornton. Ms. Hensley, do you have anything solid to back this up? Nora nodded. We do, Your Honor. We're asking for a temporary hold on the insurance payout until we can present our evidence. From the back of the courtroom, I watched through my fake beard and glasses. Meredith's polished facade cracked for a split second, panic flashing in her eyes. Her lawyer kept pushing. Your Honor, my client is pregnant and newly widowed. These accusations are causing her undue stress in a difficult time. Nora didn't flinch. If Mrs. Carver is pregnant, we'd also request a paternity test, as the child may have a claim to Mr. Carver's estate, regardless of the insurance outcome. I'll allow the temporary freeze, Judge Caldwell said after a pause. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for a full hearing. Mrs. Carver, I suggest you comply with the paternity test voluntarily, or I'll issue an order. Outside, I hung back by a vending machine, watching Meredith dial Garrett in a frenzy. They've locked the money, she hissed into her phone. And they're pushing for a paternity test. I couldn't catch Garrett's reply, but Meredith's reaction said it all. What do you mean I should handle it myself? This messes with both of us. Her voice spiked, loud enough to turn heads from folks passing by. Fine, I'll be at the clinic by 4 o'clock. She stormed off toward the parking lot, and I trailed her, keeping my distance. Nora caught up to me in the hallway. That went better than expected, she said under her breath. But we're on a clock, 2 weeks to lock this case down. I've got plenty to work with, I said quietly. But I need to get into that clinic. Garrett's running the paternity test himself. They're gonna fake it. Nora's eyes widened. That's a heavy claim, Wade. I heard them scheming, I said. If I can prove they're messing with medical records, we've got them. That's not legal, Wade, she said, her voice firm. I can't back you breaking into a clinic. I won't break in, I said, my face unreadable behind the fake beard and glasses. I'll get invited. Before Nora could ask what I meant, I was already moving. Watch yourself, she called after me. You're playing with fire. This ain't a game, I said without turning. It's a fight. Dr. Garrett Hensley's cosmetic surgery clinic sat on the top floor of a shiny medical tower in downtown Memphis. As one of the city's top surgeons, he catered to big names, local TV stars, politicians' wives, and old money types who paid him to keep them looking young. None of them knew about his side hustle peddling prescription drugs. I parked my beat-up sedan across the street, watching the staff trickle out at closing time. I'd spent a week learning the place, who left when, which doors stayed unlocked, which lights stayed on. At 7:30 p.m., Garrett's Lexus pulled into his spot. 10 minutes later, Meredith's SUV rolled up. I zoomed in with my camera, catching the quick kiss they shared before slipping through the back entrance. It was go time. I stepped out, dressed in khakis and a navy polo, the kind of outfit tech guys wear. I carried a tablet and a small toolkit, with a fake service badge clipped to my shirt. At the front door, I hit the after-hours buzzer. The night receptionist's voice crackled through. Memphis Aesthetics is closed. We open at 8 a.m. Medical equipment tech, I said, flashing a fake ID at the camera. Dr. Hensley reported a glitch with the new scanner. I'm Travis from Tech Core Solutions. A pause. I don't see any service calls logged. It's urgent, I said, glancing at my watch. The manufacturer flagged a software bug. We're hitting all our systems tonight. Won't take more than 15 minutes. Another beat of silence, then the door buzzed. Top floor, the receptionist said as I walked in. Once past the front desk, I moved fast through the clinic's sleek halls, picturing the layout I'd studied from city records. I needed to hit Garrett's private office without being spotted. Voices drifted from a lab nearby. Garrett and Meredith, at it again. I ducked into an empty exam room and waited, ear-tuned to their argument. Just do the test, Meredith snapped. We need answers. I don't need some tech poking around, wondering why I'm running a paternity test after hours, Garrett shot back. I've got the blood samples. I'll handle it myself. And if it's his? Meredith asked. Nothing changes. The results will say it's mine. My jaw clenched. I needed those samples, the real ones, not the lies Garrett was cooking up. I stayed put until their voices faded, then slipped toward his office. The electronic lock clicked open with a signal cloner in my pocket, a gadget that mimicked the last badge used. Garrett's office was all polished wood and leather, with medical diplomas on one wall and before and after shots of facelifts on another. I went straight for the computer, plugging in a USB drive to mirror the hard drive without a trace. While it ran, I snapped photos of papers on his desk, appointment logs, patient names, and a notebook with dosage numbers that didn't add up to any legit medical use. Footsteps in the hall stopped me cold. I yanked the USB and slid behind the thick curtains by the floor-to-ceiling windows just as the door swung open. Garrett came in alone, heading for a framed photo on the wall. He pulled it aside, revealing a safe. I snapped clear shots of the combination as he dialed it. The safe opened, and he pulled out a few vials of clear liquid, a stack of prescription pads, and a small refrigerated case, probably the blood samples. He stuffed them in his briefcase. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Nora, get out. Security's doing rounds. Right on cue, Garrett's phone rang. Dr. Hensley, he answered. Yeah, I'm still here, wrapping up. A pause. A tech? I didn't call for one. He whipped around, eyes scanning the room. For a second, I thought he'd clocked the curtains. No, send security up now, he barked. And get the cops. The second he stepped out to meet the guards, I slipped from behind the curtains. I had maybe a minute before they locked the place down. No chance to hit the exit. The window was no good, 12 floors up. My eyes landed on the ceiling panels. The building plans I'd studied showed a crawl space linking the offices up here. I hauled a chair under a ceiling vent, popped the screws loose, and pulled myself into the tight crawl space just as voices closed in outside. I slid the vent cover back into place and started itching through the dusty darkness, navigating by memory toward the emergency stairwell at the building's back. Below, I could hear security guards tearing through offices, Garrett's voice barking orders. Search every corner. He's after patient data. It took nearly 15 minutes of slow, silent crawling to reach the stairwell's access panel. I dropped into the empty shaft and bolted down the steps, shoving through a service door that blared an alarm as I burst outside. By the time security teams scrambled to the noise, I was already across the street, slipping into my car. As I peeled out, police cars screeched up to the clinic, lights blazing. I'd nabbed what I needed, proof of Garrett's dirty drug racket and confirmation they were rigging the paternity test. But I'd blown my cover. They knew someone was onto them now. The rules had shifted. 2 days later, I sat across from Nora in her Nashville office, laying out the evidence. Garrett's running a pill mill through his practice, I said, spreading photos on her desk. These scripts are for fake patients. And this, I tapped a spreadsheet, shows cash funneled through dummy companies back to him. Meredith is in on it. I opened an audio file on my laptop. Meredith's voice filled the room. The shipment from Colombia came in 15,000 pills. I've swapped the inventory with real patient names, like you wanted. Nora pressed her fingers to her temples. Good Lord. She's neck-deep in drug trafficking. I slid another file her way. 4 of her recent real estate deals went to shell companies they control. They're moving millions. Nora leaned back in her chair. This is bigger than your insurance scam, Wade. This is organized crime. They're rattled after my stunt at the clinic, I said, shutting my laptop. Garrett's beefed up security. I can't get near them now. Maybe it's time to loop in the cops, Nora said. I shook my head. Not until I know if that baby's mine. If we move too fast, they'll vanish and take my kid with them. Nora gave me a hard look. You're getting too deep into this, Wade. They were gonna raise my child with the money they got from blowing me up, I said, my voice steady but cold. My phone pinged with an alert. I glanced at it, my gut tightening. Garrett just pulled up the prenatal test results. I fired up my laptop, activating the spyware I'd planted in his system. I'm in. I can see his screen. We both stared as the results loaded. There it was, clear as day, 99.9% chance I was the father, Lord, Nora whispered. It's your kid. My face didn't move, but my hands balled into fists. Look at this. On the screen, Garrett opened some editing software. With a few clicks, he tweaked the file, swapping my name for his as the father. He's forging medical records, Nora said, grabbing her notepad. This is gold for court. Not yet, I said, eyes locked on the screen. This ain't going to court. Nora's head snapped up. What are you saying? Garrett's got a cabin up in the Smoky Mountains, I said. Off the grid, where they hide when they want to disappear. They're headed there tonight. How do you know? She asked. I showed her a text Garrett sent to Meredith, pack light. Mountain cabin tonight. Gotta tie up loose ends. No trace. Nora's voice was cautious. Wait, what's your plan? I met her eyes, and something in my look made her go still. I'm gonna have a talk with my wife's boyfriend. Face to face. You can't go after him like that, she said. He's dangerous. If he knows you're alive, that's exactly what I want him to know, I cut in, checking my watch. I stood, packing my gear. Court's in 4 days. I'll be there. As the door clicked shut behind me, Nora stood alone, surrounded by files of lies and crimes, probably wondering if she'd just watched me turn from a guy who got burned into something darker, maybe a hunter, maybe worse. Rain pounded the twisty mountain road as Garrett's Lexus hugged the curves, its autopilot doing the work. Inside, Garrett's hands gripped the wheel anyway, knuckles pale. We should have ditched everything, Meredith, he said, his voice tight. Whoever was in my office knows too much. Meredith stared out at the black woods whipping by. Your accounts are being watched. So are mine. We wait until the insurance clears. It's frozen, Garrett snapped. There's no money coming. My lawyer says it's temporary, she said. Once the paternity test shows you're the father, Wade's parents' claim collapses. They've got no ground to stand on. Garrett's laugh was sharp and bitter. You really buy that? Someone's building a case against us. First the clinic, then the court papers, it's all tied together, Garrett said, his voice sharp. You're being paranoid. I'm being realistic, Meredith shot back. The headlights of Garrett's Lexus cut through the rain-soaked dark as they wound up the final stretch to their cabin in the Smoky Mountains. He pulled under the carport and killed the engine. For a moment, they sat in silence, the rain pounding the roof like a drum. 3 days, Garrett said finally. If the money's still frozen, we grab what we've got and get out of the country. Meredith's hand drifted to her belly. And the baby? Garrett's jaw tightened. What about it? It's mine. The test said so. The test you faked? Her voice was cold as ice. I'm not dumb, Garrett. I saw you messing with the results on your laptop. It's Wade's, isn't it? His face flushed red. Does it matter? Wade's gone. This kid gets my name, my legacy, my money. Our money, Meredith corrected. Let's take this inside, Garrett snapped, shoving his door open and stepping into the downpour. They ran through the rain to the cabin's covered porch, Garrett fumbling with the keys, cursing as the wind slung water in their faces. Finally, the door swung open, and they stumbled into the dark cabin. He flipped the light switches, nothing. Power's out, he muttered, pulling out his phone to use the flashlight. Check the generator, Meredith said, sweeping her own phone's light across the kitchen to find candles. Garrett vanished into the utility room off the kitchen. A moment later, she heard a sharp gasp, then dead silence. Garrett, she called, striking a match to light a candle. You found the switch? No answer. Garrett. She moved toward the utility room, holding the candle high. He stood frozen, staring at something on the workbench, just out of her candle's glow. What's wrong with you? She asked. His face was pale as death when he turned. Someone's been here. She pushed past him, raising the candle. There, on the workbench, were my dog tags, the ones they thought burned up in my car. Next to them was a Polaroid of Meredith and Garrett watching my car go up in flames. That's impossible, she whispered, her voice breaking. He's dead. We saw the explosion. A creak from the main room stopped them cold, the sound of boots on hardwood. Someone's in here, Garrett hissed, grabbing a hammer from the workbench. They crept back to the living room, Garrett in front, hammer raised. The room looked empty, but the front door was wide open, rain blowing in. I locked that door, he said, edging toward it. Thunder crashed, shaking the cabin, and every light blazed on, blinding them for a split second. When Meredith's eyes cleared, she saw a figure in the armchair across the room, facing the dark windows. Hello, Meredith, I said, my voice low and familiar. Miss me? I stood and turned. A faint scar ran along my jaw from where I'd cut myself escaping the car. Her candle slipped from her hand, hitting the floor and sputtering out. You're dead, she whispered. This isn't real. I'm as real as it gets, I said, calm but sharp. Unlike your tears, your love, or anything about our marriage, it seems. Garrett moved first, lunging with the hammer. I sidestepped like I'd done 100 times in training, grabbing his wrist and twisting hard. The hammer clattered to the floor as he grunted in pain. Let's keep this friendly, Doc, I said, holding his wrist tight. We're practically family, right? You, me, Meredith, our kid. His eyes went wide. What? The paternity test, the real one? I kept my tone even, squeezing his wrist until he dropped to his knees. Meredith backed against the wall, her eyes darting between us. How'd you survive? She stammered. Bomb squad training, I said, locking eyes with her. Years in Iraq, dismantling explosives, gives you a sixth sense. You should have picked a better way to get rid of me. I let Garrett's wrist go, shoving him back. He scrambled away, reaching for his phone. Looking for this? I held up his smartphone. Disabled it when I cut the power. Yours too, Meredith. No calls tonight. What do you want? She asked, her voice shaking. Just a talk, I said, settling back into the armchair like we were catching up over coffee. I want my wife to tell me why she thought killing me was easier than asking for a divorce. My voice stayed steady, but my eyes were cold as steel. Was it just the money, or was there more? You were never there, she blurted. Even when you were home, you were buried in your security work. Do you know how lonely that was? Lonely enough to try to kill me? I asked quietly. It wasn't supposed to go like that, she started. Then how is it supposed to go? I pressed. This is a waste of time, Garrett cut in, his voice regaining its cocky edge. If you had real proof, you'd have gone to the cops. You're here alone, which means you're bluffing. I smiled. You think I'm alone? Headlights swept across the windows as vehicles pulled up outside. Doors slammed. Garrett rushed to the window. Who's that? What did you do? That's the DA, I said, cool as ever. They're really curious about your little pill business. Those offshore accounts you thought were hidden? Not so much. Meredith lunged for the back door, but I was faster, blocking her path. You can't do this, she hissed. You're carrying my kid, I said, my voice finally cracking with feeling. My kid, who you plan to raise with drug money after you killed me. A loud knock rattled the front door. Federal agents. Open up. Garrett's face twisted with fury. You lowlife, he roared, charging me and slamming us both into the kitchen island. I took the hit, my old combat training kicking in. I twisted, using Garrett's charge to send him slamming into the kitchen cabinets. Plate shattered as he lunged for a knife from the block on the counter. Outside, agents hammered on the door. Final warning. Open up or we're coming in. Garrett swung the knife wildly. I dodged, but the blade nicked my forearm, slicing through my sleeve and drawing blood. I answered with a hard kick to his knee, a nasty crack rang out, and he screamed, staggering but still clutching the knife. "You're done," he growled, limping toward me. "Dead for good this time." I backed toward the utility room, pulling Garrett away from Meredith, who stood glued to the spot by the back door. When he lunged again, I grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall and swung it hard. Metal smashed into his face, and he dropped like a stone, blood pouring from a cut on his forehead. The knife skidded across the floor. The front door exploded open, DA agents storming in, guns up. Federal agents. "Everyone down. Hands where we can see 'em." I raised my hands. "He's got a knife," I said, nodding at the blade. As agents cuffed Garrett, my eyes locked with Meredith's. She hadn't budged, hadn't tried to bolt. As they let her out, I grabbed her arm. "One last thing, Meredith. My kid? They'll never know you were their mother." Her eyes widened, real fear flashing for the first time. Before she could say a word, the agents hauled her to the waiting vans. I stood in the trashed kitchen, blood dripping from my arm, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage. Outside, red and blue lights cut through the rain. This wasn't the end, not by a long shot, but the first part of my plan was done. Garrett and Meredith were staring down federal charges, but I knew the system too well. Charges didn't mean convictions. Folks with cash and connections often slithered free. I needed a safety net, something to keep them away from me and my kid for good. That meant Nora. 3 days after the bust at the Smoky Mountain cabin, Memphis was buzzing with the news. Local stations led with it, top surgeon and real estate agent nabbed in drug trafficking sting. The DA was spilling details left and right, which raised eyebrows for some but made sense to me. "I'd cut a deal, your testimony for custody guarantees," Nora said, pushing papers across her desk. The DA's office agreed. "Whatever happens with the criminal case, they'll back your petition for full custody of the kid once it's born." I scanned the documents. "And if they dodge the drug charges?" "Unlikely, but if they do?" "We've got the attempted murder charges as a fallback," Nora said, tapping another file. "I've filed a wrongful death suit against them both. Technically, you're suing them for trying to blow you up." "Twisted," I said, signing the papers with a steady hand. "When's the arraignment?" "Tomorrow," she said. Garrett posted bail, $4 million. His clinic partners footed it. Meredith wasn't so lucky. Nobody stepped up for her. I felt nothing hearing that, no smugness, no sympathy, just a cold drive to keep going. "What about the insurance money?" "Locked down tight," Nora said. "The company's digging into fraud. With the DA seizing their assets, they're broke." She studied me. "You look rough, Wade. Are you sleeping at all?" I ignored her. "I need to be in that courtroom tomorrow, unrecognized." Nora sighed. "The media's gonna swarm. This case has it all: money, drugs, betrayal, violence. They're eating it up." "Good," I said, standing. "That's what I need for the next step, total ruin." I checked my watch. Not just jail time. I want their names, their futures, their whole lives torn apart. Nora's face tightened. "You've already got them, Wade." I stayed quiet, heading for the door. She called after me, soft but firm. "Have you thought about what comes after? When this is done, and you've got your kid?" I stopped, hand on the knob. Truth was, I hadn't let myself look that far. Every ounce of me was locked on payback, on crushing the people who'd stabbed me in the back. "One fight at a time," I said, and walked out without a glance. The next morning, the Davidson County Courthouse steps were crawling with reporters as Garrett Hensley, Memphis's once shining surgeon, was hustled inside by his lawyers. He wore a sharp suit and a look of smug outrage. In the crowd of journalists, a guy with a thick beard, heavy glasses, and a press badge reading Elliot Vaughn, Memphis commercial appeal blended in. Nobody gave him a second look, just another reporter in the chaos. Inside, I took a seat in the press section, right behind Garrett and his legal team. When he turned to scan the room, I kept my head down, scribbling in a notebook. If he'd looked harder, he might have caught my eyes, the same ones that watched him go down in that cabin 3 nights ago. The arraignment kicked off with the charges: illegal drug distribution, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Garrett pleaded not guilty, his voice smooth and cocksure. Meredith came in next, looking rough in an orange jumpsuit. The judge shot down her bail request, calling her a flight risk. I felt nothing watching her lead away. The woman I'd married was a ghost, a lie I'd bought for years. Outside, Garrett held a press conference on the steps, his lawyers shielding him like bodyguards. These accusations are pure fiction, he told the mics, all charm and confidence. I'm a doctor. My life's about healing people. This is a smear campaign driven by jealous rivals and tabloid nonsense. I wove through the crowd, getting into position. I gave a slight nod to Nora, who stood near the back, right on time. As Garrett kept up his smooth-talking press conference, Nora approached a court officer, speaking low and slipping him an envelope. The officer skimmed the contents, then strode toward Garrett. Dr. Garrett Hensley, he said, cutting through the speech. You're being served in the matter of Carver versus Hensley and Carver. Garrett froze, taking the envelope like it was a live grenade. What's this? A reporter shouted. Nora stepped forward, her voice carrying over the crowd. A wrongful death lawsuit, filed on behalf of Wade Carver's estate against Dr. Hensley and Meredith Carver for conspiring to kill him. The press went wild, cameras flashing, questions flying. Garrett's lawyer tried to hustle him away, but the damage was done. I slipped through the chaos, already focused on my next move, Garrett's clinic. By midday, I was parked across from the Memphis Aesthetics Center, listening through an earpiece. The mics I'd planted weeks ago caught every frantic word as news of the lawsuit spread. Dr. Hensley says it's all lies, the office manager told the staff. Keep things normal. I smirked. That wouldn't last. I opened my laptop and tapped into the clinic systems, security, patient records, building controls. Weeks of quiet hacking had given me the keys. I triggered the plan I'd set up, a digital bomb to expose them without touching legit medical data. First, printers across the building spat out financial records, spreadsheets showing offshore payments, fake patient charges, insurance scams. Then, the digital displays flipped from calming spa vibes to footage of Garrett swiping drugs from the clinic's pharmacy after hours. Finally, every screen in the place showed the same image, Garrett and Meredith watching my car burn, caught by my drone the night they tried to kill me. Through my earpiece, I heard the pandemonium, shouts, patients demanding answers, staff scrambling to kill the systems. Outside, news vans started rolling up, tipped off by anonymous emails with the same financial docs now flooding the clinic. I packed my gear. The dominoes were falling, and the trail I'd laid would lead the feds straight to the evidence. As I drove off, I called Nora. It's done, I said. The clinic's toast. Good grief, Wade, she said, sounding frazzled. Do you know what you've kicked off? The DA's blowing out my phone, asking who's leaking to the press. You tell them anything? I asked. Of course not, she said. But this is getting dicey. You're messing with a federal investigation. I'm helping it, I said. Everything I've leaked, they already have, or should. I'm just speeding things up. Nora sighed. How'd Garrett look when he got served? Like he saw a ghost, I said. His lawyers are preparing a defamation countersuit. They'll claim I'm framing them over the affair. They can try, Nora said. Those recordings you've got aren't admissible, I cut in. Got him illegally, mostly. But they don't need to hold up in court to ruin them in public. I pulled into the parking garage of my temporary apartment. I'll see you at the hearing tomorrow. Before she could argue, I hung up. Inside my place, I scanned the war room I'd built, walls plastered with photos, timelines, documents tying Meredith and Garrett to their crimes, their lies, their network of enablers. Tomorrow was the final play, shredding their public lives for good. Then, maybe, I could start thinking about what came next. Meredith sat across from her public defender in the jail's consultation room. Her hair was flat, dark roots creeping through the blonde. Without makeup, the past week's stress was carved into her face. This has to be a mistake, she said. Garrett's got to have someone bailing me out by now. The lawyer, a young guy juggling too many cases, shook his head. Ms. Carver, I've spoken with Dr. Hensley's team. They're clear, he's not footing the bill for your defense. That's ridiculous, she snapped. He needs me. I know everything about his operation. That's exactly why he's cutting you loose, the lawyer said. His team's painting you as the brains behind it all. Meredith's face went pale. He can't do that. Whatever evidence you had was likely seized in the raids, he said, checking his watch. Look, the prosecution's offering a deal. Testify against Dr. Hensley, and they'll push for lighter charges. What about the wrongful death suit? She asked. That's civil, he said. But it muddies things. The lawyer paused, his face serious. Miss Carver, I gotta ask you straight up. Did you plot to kill your husband? Meredith's eyes flickered with panic before she pulled herself together. No way. It was a freak accident. Wade's car had issues. I'd never do that. Save it for the courtroom, the lawyer cut in. But you should know they've got evidence. Your husband was digging into you and Hensley for weeks before the explosion. If Wade's alive, she said slowly, then nobody died. The wrongful death suit doesn't hold water. Attempted murder's still a crime, he pointed out. And with the evidence they've got, plus Dr. Hensley throwing you under the bus, he shrugged. The prosecution's deal might be your only shot. Meredith's mind spun. I need to talk to Wade, she blurted. That's not happening, the lawyer said. He's testifying against you. He's my kid's father, she said, her hand drifting to her belly. He can't just cut me off. The lawyer gathered his files. He can, Miss Carver. And after what you allegedly tried to pull, I'm betting he will. After he left, Meredith sat staring at her reflection in the metal table. Her world was crumbling. Garrett had ditched her. Her money was gone. Her freedom was next. And Wade, the man she'd betrayed, the one she'd planned to erase, now held all the cards. For the first time since they locked her up, real fear gripped her. The next morning broke clear and sunny, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in the Davidson County Courthouse. The hearing over Wade's estate had already drawn media buzz, but my being alive turned it into a circus. Nora showed up early, sharp in a gray suit, brushing off reporters and heading straight to the courtroom. Inside, Meredith's public defender from yesterday was already there, looking like a guy in over his head. Garrett's legal team, 3 slick suits, sat at the other table, faking confidence they didn't have. At 9 o'clock sharp, the bailiff called us to rise as Judge Evelyn Caldwell swept in. Be seated, the judge said. Before we start, let's address the elephant in the room. It's come to my attention that Mr. Wade Carver, thought to be deceased, is alive. Is that correct, counsel? Nora stood. Yes, Your Honor. My client, Mr. Carver, survived an attempt on his life and has been hiding for his safety while collecting evidence against those who tried to kill him. The courtroom buzzed. Judge Caldwell banged her gavel. Quiet. Is Mr. Carver here today? He is, Your Honor. All eyes turned as the doors swung open. I walked in, clean-shaven, in a navy suit. Cameras clicked despite the no photos rule. Garrett's face went white, his lawyers whispering frantically. I stood beside Nora, my face blank, my mind cold. The judge eyed me closely. Mr. Carver, your presence here is unusual. I need to verify your identity. Understood, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. I've submitted DNA matching my military records, plus fingerprints. The judge nodded, flipping through papers. This hearing was set to settle your estate, which is irrelevant now that you're alive. But we still need to address marital assets and the unborn child. Garrett's lead lawyer stood. Your Honor, given these wild circumstances, we request a delay to confer with our client. Denied, Judge Caldwell said sharply. Unusual or not, the facts remain. Nora rose. Your Honor, we have new evidence about Ms. Carver's attempt on my client's life, plus her role in Dr. Hensley's drug trafficking. Objection. Meredith's lawyer shot up. Any evidence gathered while Mr. Carver was dead and spying on my client isn't admissible. Not when it involves active crimes, Nora said smoothly. The DA has verified the evidence. The judge considered. I'll allow it, but I'll rule on admissibility after review. I watched it all like it was a movie, not my life falling apart. Right on cue, deputies brought Meredith in through a side door. She was in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. Her eyes darted to mine, but I stared past her, refusing to give her a glance. As she sat by her lawyer, Nora fired up a laptop linked to the courtroom's AV system. Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to play a recording Mr. Carver obtained before the attempt on his life. Go ahead, the judge said. The speakers crackled. Meredith's voice rang out, cold and clear. The insurance pays triple for an accident. $3 million, Garrett. Easy and clean. Wade never checks the policy. He just pays it. Garrett's voice followed. You're sure it'll pass as an accident? No questions? Exactly. Meredith's face collapsed as her own words buried her. Her lawyer grabbed her arm as she tried to stand. Garrett's team scribbled furiously, looking grim. Nora stopped the recording. This was recorded 3 weeks before the attempt on Mr. Carver's life. We have more, all verified by audio experts. This is absurd. Garrett's lawyer barked. These recordings were made without consent or a warrant. Tennessee's a one-party consent state, Nora said calmly. And since they were plotting a murder, there's no privacy protection. Judge Evelyn Caldwell eyed the flustered lawyers, then my stone-cold face, and finally Meredith's shattered expression. I've heard enough for now, she said firmly. Based on what's been presented, I'm ordering a freeze on all assets tied to Meredith Carver and Dr. Garrett Hensley that connect to Mr. Carver's estate or the insurance policy. I leaned toward Nora and whispered, now. She nodded and stood. Your Honor, one more thing. Given Ms. Carver's incarceration and Dr. Hensley's legal troubles, my client requests emergency custody of the unborn child. DNA tests confirm Mr. Carver is the father. Meredith let out a choked sob. He can't do that. Control your client, the judge snapped at her lawyer. Nora pressed on. Your Honor, we have records showing Ms. Carver used prescription drugs well into her pregnancy, endangering the child. That was the knockout punch, evidence I'd pulled from Garrett's files, proving Meredith took opioids deep into her first trimester. What's more, Nora added, Ms. Carver and Dr. Hensley worked together to fake paternity tests to strip my client of his rights. We've submitted proof of his tampering. The judge's face turned grim. If these claims hold up, this court will have no choice but to grant Mr. Carver sole custody once the child is born. For the first time in that courtroom, I turned and locked eyes with Meredith. My stare was ice, hers was pure panic, like a cornered animal. This hearing is adjourned until next week, Judge Caldwell said. Ms. Carver stays in custody. All assets remain frozen pending further review. Reporters bolted for the doors, chasing the story of a lifetime, a husband back from the dead, fighting for his kid and his fortune against the wife who tried to kill him. I stood next to Nora, unfazed by the frenzy. It's almost done, she said softly. Nah, I said. One last move. That night, Meredith's real estate firm held an open house for a $5 million mansion in Germantown, too big a deal to cancel despite her mess. They'd swapped in another agent, passing off her absence as a personal matter. Memphis's high rollers wandered the place, sipping wine and gushing over marble counters and lake views. Nobody noticed the tech guy who'd shown up early to fix the AV system. At 7:30 p.m. sharp, as the stand-in agent started her pitch to the crowd, every screen in the house, home theater, security monitors, all of them, lit up at once. Meredith's voice blared through the speakers, make sure the blast leaves nothing behind. The insurance has to be paid clean. The screens showed her and Garrett staring at my burning car, not lifting a finger, not calling for help. The agent's wine glass shattered on the floor. Guests stood frozen. Then the screen shifted to me, alive, looking straight into the camera. I'm Wade Carver. Until a few weeks ago, I was married to Meredith Carver, the agent for this house. She and her lover tried to kill me for insurance money. Tonight, I'm showing Memphis who they really are. For 7 minutes, the screens played a tight montage, surveillance clips, recorded calls, bank transfers, laying out not just the murder plot but years of fraud and lies. By the time security killed the system, guests were already posting clips online. Within hours, #CarverRevenge was blowing up across the country. Garrett, out on bail in his downtown Memphis penthouse, watched his world collapse in real time as the videos spread. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, colleagues, patients, friends, all wanting answers. When federal agents showed up with new warrants based on the leaked evidence, he barely blinked, just sat there on his fancy couch, staring at his phone as his life fell apart. Meredith, locked in her cell, had no phone, no social media, but she could feel the shift in the air. The guard's sideways glances told her something was up. One finally said, "Your husband doesn't mess around when it comes to payback." Close to midnight, I sat alone in Nora's office. News channels were running non-stop coverage. Social media was a firestorm. Garrett's clinic had cut him loose with a public statement. It was over. I'd done what I said I'd do, tore their lives to pieces. Nora walked in with 2 glasses of bourbon and handed me one. You did it, she said, sitting across from me. They're done, legally, professionally, socially. They're not coming back from this. I took the glass but didn't drink. I should feel something, right? Relief, maybe? Victory? But it's just empty. Nora looked at me, worried in her eyes. That's the thing about revenge, Wade. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't fix the hurt. It just pushes it aside. So what's next? I asked, voice low. You start building again, she said. For you, for your kid. She reached over and took my hand. You've been a ghost for weeks, hiding, plotting. It's time to live again. I stared at our hands, feeling a tiny fracture in the wall I had built around myself. I don't even know where to start, I admitted, barely above a whisper. You let go of what they stole, Nora said softly, and hold tight to what they couldn't touch, your kid, your future. Outside, Memphis's skyline sparkled under the stars. I'd built a life here once, lost it all, and now, with my child's future in my hands, I was ready to try again. For the first time in weeks, I saw a glimpse of something beyond the fight, a life waiting for me and my kid, a chance to be more than a ghost.